Hey everybody, welcome again to Each Other News. We have Snehal. He's the CEO and co-founder of Horizon3.ai. And I'm joined here with my pal Paulo, and we're going to go through some stuff to figure out what's going on over there. And a lot of things happening, of course, in this world we're going to be talking about. And let's dig into this. Snehal, how are you? First of all, welcome. How are you doing?
Amazing. Great to connect with you guys. And, as we were talking about earlier, the role of channel is so crucial in cybersecurity, and I'm excited to dig into it with you guys today.
Hell yeah, like what, 93% of the cyber stuff is going to or through or with channel right now. I don't know if it's going to be 100% one day, but we'll take
It, it,
93.
yeah, I mean, 93, at the end of the day, so my background, I was a CIO in financial services, and then
Mhm.
I was the CTO at Splunk, and then was at DoD. In every one of my jobs, especially in cybersecurity, the channel was crucial because cyber is a last mile trust sale
Mhm.
at the end of the day. Rarely are you going to buy a cyber product through a product led motion off the web, swiping a credit card. Maybe like a home antivirus, but for the most part, enterprises aren't going to buy that way. And it's you're not going to win cyber deals one steak dinner at a time or one spam email at a time. It's a reference based sell. It's somebody you trust that has deep knowledge and is willing to put their reputation on the line to vouch for that tech. That's how you get through the noise. And so you look at your peer groups, your fellow CIOs and CISOs, and you look at the partners you've been doing business with for 5, 10, 20 years, because it is in their best interest to give you truthful advice and not hawk you the next piece of slop, because they want to keep doing business with you for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And so you end up trusting input from these groups. And so I think cyber companies that recognize the value of the channel, not as a transactional paper holder, but as a key part of the reference-based selling motion, those are the ones that break out and scale out. And then it goes to making sure that you treat your partners the right way to incentivize and enable and eliminate friction for them to be those facilitators for you.
I was
Sorry.
going to say, Sinhal, I'm going to use this little clip, right, to send out to other vendors so they can understand, the value of the channel. So thank you very much.
Please, please do. Yeah, Paulo.
Paulo, what did you
No, I
want?
just, I just the way you were talking there just made me think about marketplaces, which has always is very very hot. But those are the things that I like as a past channel chief struggled with too. What are your thoughts on marketplaces? Do they have a role at all,
So,
or
what's
from what
interesting
you're
about
saying,
market?
is it a lot tougher?
It's a lot tougher. So, one of the things about marketplace, the good and bad. So, the bad is, okay, you as a partner, held a field marketing event. You had one of your trusted people there, that, relationship, and you're talking about a piece of tech. And if they then go off and buy that tech directly from the marketplace instead of coming through you, one, you're not going to get your cut, your commissions, and you've earned the commissions. But then two, it's almost impossible on the back end of revenue operations and transaction processing to give you credit for that marketplace buy. So the underlying deal mechanics and deal routing is impossible. So what happens with the channel, with the marketplace, is it creates inherent channel conflict and a ton of friction between the partner, the customer, and RevOps of the vendor to like true people up. And it just becomes super confusing. The second hard part of that is it sets the street price, which is great. But
Yep.
if you're not careful, and if you undercut your partners on the channel, you've now just negotiated against yourself. So the problem with marketplaces in cyber, I believe, it's got to be either strictly segmented, where marketplaces for like the SMB part of the business or something like that, or you're using marketplace like with AWS with their cloud credits as a form of currency. And so you're doing virtual marketplace offerings and then using those, or private marketplace offerings, and using the private marketplaces and the AWS monopoly money to be able to buy your product with the partners and systems. So if the issue I have with marketplaces, especially in a channel business, is there are a million ways to screw it up, and there's only a couple of ways to get it right, and very few people get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
interesting too is like once your clients are doing transactions through marketplaces, right? It's pretty hard to rip them off of that if you decide to go flip into some of their, into another brand, right? Another product, because they've got you, and I don't think they want to let you go once they've got their roots and their claws in you, right?
Well, it goes back to what's the value of the channel? If the channel, I mean, there's certain resellers that are just transaction processors,
Yeah.
right? They don't bring any value to the table. And I think those are the ones that feel the pressure from a marketplace. But most of the resellers aren't like that. At least the good ones that I deal with or that I've seen throughout my career. They bring something to the table. They bring expertise, they bring network, they bring bundled hours to help drive success of implementation. There's always something more that they bring. And so I think the pressure is on VAR or resellers and channel partners to continue to invest in their differentiation and make sure that they're bringing value to the table, or they get relegated to being transaction processors, in which case they have a hard time distinguishing themselves from AWS Marketplace or the Azure Marketplace or anyone else.
Yeah.
100%. Hey, Snehal, could you give me a bit of your journey? How did you get here, my friend?
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer by education and trade, and started my career in distributed systems at IBM back in the early 2000s. So I started on the mainframe, WebSphere, middleware, and then worked on WebSphere distributed systems. And it was awesome because if you just out of half, it was an area I was interested in, but distributed systems and in that middleware stack, WebSphere, WebLogic, JBoss, Tomcat, like that stack required you learn about applications around infrastructure, databases, data management, and hardware, and distributed availability, and so on. So it was actually a great layer to build technical expertise around for enterprise software. And I actually still go back to my distributed systems background and my experience on the mainframe and open systems, even today, 20, 25 years later. But then I was a CIO at GE Capital, and I got to make use of all the technology I helped build at IBM, which was kind of a fun
Did it work?
experience. Well, it was more like, why the hell did we do it this way? Like, oh, maybe we should have spoken to more customers. And it was amazing at GE because came in as a technologist to a bank, and the challenge was, how do you transform GE Capital to be a fintech? And it was an amazing company already and with great talent, but how do you align that talent towards commercial outcomes utilizing technology? And so that was a really cool experience. And I moved out west to be the CTO at Splunk, and post IPO saw just crazy growth from 300 million in ARR to over 1.2 billion when I left. And then I decided to leave industry altogether. And I disappeared for about 4 years and joined US Special Operations Command as its first ever CTO within JSOC, or Joint Special Operations Command, as the component. And it was the hardest, most meaningful work of my career because I joined JSOC as the CTO, but my military experience was watching Jack Ryan and Tropic Thunder. Like I was not a shooter. I didn't come from a military background. And so I knew nothing about rank. I knew nothing about mission beyond books and movies. And then I got to sit down and learn from the greatest leaders the world will never know about, and understood what does it mean to be a high performing organization? Like, what makes JSOC a high performing organization? It's that there is shared understanding. Everybody understands the objective, right? You empower those closest to the problem to get the job done, and you create a cadence of accountability. If you can institutionalize those three characteristics at scale, you're high performing. And I got to see that firsthand. And then when I left JSOC, I started Horizon 3. About a third of my people early on were former special operations NSA CIA types, and 2/3 were nerds and skinny jeans that knew how to build, ship, and sell enterprise software. And bringing those two worlds together culturally, as we've scaled the company from 2020, we had 6 of us as the early team. We now have 400 employees. We're going to double to 800 later this year. Has been quite a ride in scaling culture, scaling talent, and delivering just world-class capabilities for our customers.
Well, damn,
So
that's
that's
a
a real
that's a journey.
180.
And by the way, I never heard of nerds and skinny jeans. Is that a thing now? Because
You got to spend more time in Silicon Valley, man. The problem in the Valley, and I opine about this, is not only do you have nerds and skinny jeans, you have nerds and skinny jeans that think they're God's gift to society, and that's
aren't
like
they
the worst combination.
sipping their lattes, man? I get it, brother.
Yeah.
Paul, you wanted to add something there?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say about your career. No career is linear, but that's definitely a 180 shift in your career. And what's really interesting for me, just listening to you, is that you sort of came into that job not knowing anything, and did that actually benefit the team that you had this, this perspective that no one had, you weren't a grizzled veteran with that kind of perspective?
It's interesting. So that was actually the second or third time I went through this experience. So at GE Capital, like I knew enough about finance to be dangerous and work with enterprise finance customers when I was at IBM, but I didn't understand the nuances and intricacies of dealer inventory finance. If you go to a Ducati dealership, those bikes aren't owned by the dealer. They're not owned by the manufacturer. They're actually owned by GE Capital. And the manufacturer and the dealer are paying interest while the bikes are on the lot. And there's all sorts of caveats to that type of financial product. There's a bunch of those examples. I didn't know anything about that. And the value is, could I learn the domain? And my bet on myself has always been, I feel I'm capable enough to learn the domain. More importantly, though, I bring a new perspective to the incumbent organization and help people think differently about the problem. And I think that's where the advantage was. Now, the organization has to be willing to think differently. And you'll always run into bureaucrats and curmudgeons that don't want to change how they operate. But if you've got the right conditions for change and you are able to be a wrecking ball to bureaucracy in organizations that want to change, you can have a profound impact. And that's kind of become my MO, which is I am the wrecking ball to bureaucracy and force people to think differently, ask hard questions, ask stupid questions, as well. Ask a lot of stupid questions because I don't know what I don't know. But the goal isn't to be the smartest person in the room. The goal is to be the most prepared person in the room. So when you do ask a question, you're asking so from a level of preparedness that instantly brings credibility to you in any conversation. And that's one thing I learned from JSOC. The General Howell, who was the JSOC commander that I got to work under for a number of years, his superpower was being the most prepared person in the room, and you knew that by the quality of questions he asked. And that, to me, is the difference between a good leader and a great leader. A great leader knows when to listen and how to show their knowledge through questions.
Right.
Interesting stuff, man. Look, so it's the Horizon Wrecking Ball.ai. Is that where we're headed?
Yeah. I joke it's Horizon 3 because Horizons 1 and 2 didn't work out. and I've already registered Horizon 4, 5, and 6.
Third time's a charm, right?
Now it's
you're thinking ahead.
if you think about, so what is it about special operations folks that makes them special? It's not that they can run far, shoot well, or swim fast. It's that they're learn-it-alls that can solve any problem as a team under pressure, right? That's their superpower. So the early team at Horizon 3 came from that community. And what better way to build cultural DNA than to found it on learn-it-alls and that learn-it-all mindset of problem solvers under pressure. And so we have this incredibly awesome cultural advantage of this learn-it-alls ingrained everywhere. We have a very strict no smart jerks policy, or I often joke the company can only tolerate one smart jerk, and he's got two thumbs and is this guy right here.
Well, smart jerks with skinny jeans should be the motto, man.
Yeah, I know. But it's so it's a pretty awesome way to de-risk execution, is being having that type of learn-it-all culture underpin everything we operate on.
So the Snehal, let's just double click on this cyber game we're playing here now with all these threat actors and enters Iran and all these other stuff. What's first of all, zooming out, right? What's your take on what's happening right now?
Let's split this up into two big things at the moment. So one is the hype side. I think that there's a lot of benefit to some of the fear mongering that comes out of Anthropic, as an example, on Mythos is going to destroy the world and all the crazy stuff. But then if you look at the reaction from the cyber community, there was a pretty large collective eye roll. As you double clicked, it was just a marginal improvement to 4.6 and 4.7. And so what's nice is the fear mongering elevated cyber as a profile across every board at every major company. Great time to ask for more money if you're a CISO when you've got panic at the board level. So I think that if you cut through the hype, there's something interesting there that we can double click on. The other part is the Iran conflict. And we started to see this in the Ukraine conflict with Russia. The distinction between military targets, civilian targets, and business targets is no longer there. There's just targets, right? So the Iranians blowing up AWS data centers in the Emirates and in Bahrain, as an example, first time that's ever happened. Cyber attacks against CCTV cameras in those cities in the Middle East in order to improve Shahad drone targeting. Never really been done before. So you've got two big things that have happened. The more interesting is the lack of distinction between military and non-military targets. And now everybody is on the table, whether you're a financial services company, a hospital, a critical supplier to the Department of Defense, you're all at risk of Iranian military retaliation, which is never really true previously. So does those two broader things make sense when I talk about it that way?
Yeah, I mean, you just opened up 100 questions there, my friend.
Yeah, millions.
And
Well, say the third one is the role of AI in cyber warfare. And the analogy I use there is I grew up playing Nintendo like as a kid, and you played Contra. Ever play Contra?
No.
On the original Nintendo shooting game. And in Contra, you get limited ammunition, and you're super selective in who you're going to shoot, make sure you don't run out of bullets. Unless you put in the cheat code, and the cheat code was up, up, down, down, left, right, BA start. You punch in that cheat code, you get unlimited ammunition. And when you did that, man, it was full auto. Indiscriminate shooting, no care of targets, just blast everybody. That's what AI does to cyber warfare. You have unlimited bullets. You don't have to be selective of your targets anymore. So how has that changed the tactics of the adversary? They don't have to go after Boeing directly. They can go after the 300-person landing gear design firm in Oklahoma because they're on the table. You have unlimited bullets. You don't have to be selective anymore. So I think those are the three big things. The mythos hype and what that means for CISA KEVs and vulnerabilities. And that's something really to talk about. The role of blended targets, no longer military, non-military. And then the third is the adversary has unlimited cyber bullets. How does that change the game writ large? So let's dive into all three. Where do you want to start?
Mythos, let's start there because that's got the news. I mean, of course, all three are important, right? But what's your take? I mean, is that keeping you awake at night? You know, Mythos.
Mythos specifically is absolutely not keeping me awake at night. And the reason why is the adversary could hack you without Mythos. They've been hacked. So the question is, what did Mythos bring to the table? But more generally, we've already seen this trend over the last 2 years with LLMs and vulnerability research. So remember, LLMs in this world are world-class at code analysis. So they need access to the source code to do things of consequence. And they're really putting pressure on the legacy kind of static security testing, code analysis type companies that were out there. And you're seeing a lot of them start to struggle because LLMs are really good at finding software flaws in source code. So let's assume for a moment that Palo Alto Networks is part of the Glasswing project from Mythos. So let's assume that, and I have no inside knowledge, so I'm just hypothesizing here. Let's assume that Palo used Mythos to find and fix flaws in all their firewall products as part of the Glasswing project. Cool. And let's say it's going to take 60-ish more days to fix all those flaws, test the patch, and then roll the patch out. So at some point in September, we should see a Palo Patch Tuesday with 1,000 vulnerabilities fixed, right? What is the first thing the attacker is going to do? They're going to take that patch, do a patch diff with the previous version, find every line of code that was changed, and build an exploit for every bug that was just fixed, and then unleash hell, right? And this is exactly.
I thought it wasn't going to keep you awake at night, man, but that seems to be.
It's one of those like I've learned to focus on the variables I can control. So the variables I control keep me up at night, and the rest of the variables are just there, right? I have no control over it. So this is one I have no control over. It's just the fact that this is how it's going to be. Okay, now what? 50% of CISA KEVs are still unpatched and exploitable 2 months after notification. So what I think is going to happen in the fall is this massive CISA KEV tsunami, and organizations can barely handle 1 KEV a month. Can they handle 1 KEV a day? Can they handle 100 KEVs a day? And I think that's what the second half of this year is going to look like. is if companies haven't invested in a world-class process for reacting to CISA KEVs, how you assess your exploitability, quickly patch, precision patching, verification, and so on for KEVs specifically, I think they're going to be in a world of hurt. And I think that's what Mythos and LLMs bring to the table is a CISA KEV tsunami in the second half of the year.
And Snehal, when you compound that by multiple brands, right? It's not just the Palo Altos of the world. The 40 folks, I guess, that's in that glass wing thing. They're going to have the same kind of patch Tuesdays, right?
Yeah, but if you look at the participants, so if you look at CISA KEVs, the bulk of the KEVs that were most devastating were in the edge gateway layer.
Okay.
F5, Ivanti, Palo, Fortinet, like kind of that layer. Those are the patches I'd be particularly worried about. And as a CIO or CISO, I would be laser and as a reseller, as a channel, company, I would be especially focused on every customer I've sold those products to, and proactively working with them to help show them what a world-class KEV process looks like. It's less the EDR and less the other things, but that layer, and then the second layer is the RMM layer, the remote management tool layer. So we saw that with Enable just went KEV as an example. There's a lot of open kind of remote management software. Anything that like SolarWinds was an example of that as well. So kind of the Ivanti or Simple Help RMM, those types of products, that's where I'd be really nervous right now if I were a defender.
Well, we got to look forward to the tsunami in the fall. Like I thought,
tsunami is not a good combination.
Yeah. Well, back to the value of the channel, though.
Yeah.
If you are a Palo firewall reseller, this is your opportunity to differentiate yourself, right? How do you be the trusted advisor to everybody you just sold firewalls to help them understand what's coming and be a thought leader and elevate your profile at those shops?
100%. Patch. Get ahead of the tsunami, I guess.
And that's where your margins are going to be increasing when you have that kind of relationship where you can go in and be like that business builder. Hey, I'm going to keep you alive because I just figured this out. See, Ed, I just want to take it back to something you said about AI, and this is a little bit off topic, but it's a war question. If you look throughout the history of warfare, right? They usually come to an end when one of the combatants has to get into a war of attrition, right? Where they declare total war and they're running out of resources, supply chain, and they can't keep up. Basically, the best example is World War II. With AI, as you just said there, where they have an indiscriminate amount of bullets, right? Does that totally eliminate that problem at all when you get into warfare? Because you look at some of the conflicts that are ongoing now. The biggest one I think about is Ukraine and Russia, and think, well, eventually this is going to come to an end because one of the two combatants is going to come up against the wall, and they're going to have to either do unconditional surrender or make a peace agreement or something along the lines. But your take on that? Sorry for the long question.
No, it's a super interesting question. So, generally in the history of warfare, you think about what creates an asymmetric advantage, and is that asymmetric advantage durable? And that asymmetric advantage tends to come in with two main criteria: cost, right? So what we saw in the Ukraine war, and we actually just saw this with in the Iranian conflict, where the cost of a Patriot missile was consequentially higher than the cost of a Shahad drone. And so is an asymmetric advantage in cost, whether it's munitions or a drone versus a tank or so on. The second and more compelling, though, is OODA loops, right? The observe, orient, decide, act kind of feedback loop. And that was the John Boyd Air Force fighter jet kind of story, where what made fighter pilots in that era so effective was they could make decisions faster than the enemy could in a dogfight. And the faster your OODA loop, the more advantage you had in making decisions quicker than the enemy. Napoleon was famous for this, and the way that he accelerated OODA loops by lowering the decision-making authorities in the Napoleonic army versus the the opposing group there. So in cyber, both things are happening, right? The cost of attack is dramatically going to zero. And the OODA loop, the number of decisions per minute an AI attacker can make compared to an AI defender is 100, 1,000, 100,000x more. And so you've got those conditions for a completely new cyber warfare game that's coming out. And we see this. So we had our AI hacker Node Zero hacked an organization in 77 seconds. A legit like bank that had every Gucci tool you could buy. 77 seconds. If your defenses can't stop me in 76 seconds, it's game over. Because at second 77, I've locked you out of the system, locked you out of the building, burrowed deeply into your network, and taken all of your data and done whatever I've wanted. And so, can your defenses detect and stop in 76 seconds? Yes or no? And the answer for nearly every organization is it can't. And the bottleneck is the human, right, in that regard. So the future of cyber warfare is AI fighting AI with humans by exception. I think we all see that happening. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
scary. I may need a drink right now, but yeah,
but there's hope. So I'm gonna tell you something that I think is super compelling, and we actually proved this out in some research we just did. So when I was at DoD, I had the privilege of being involved with Project Maven and that group. Project Maven was the algorithmic warfare task force led by a guy named Colonel Drew Kukor. Kukor is awesome. Marine Colonel, there's actually a book that just came out about him and that team. And the challenges and difficulty of trying to pilot AI warfare in the department at a time where it was extremely bureaucratic. And also at a time where Google was publicly in a fight over this. If you remember, there's a big Google Maven kind of battle in 2018. So when you think about the risk, the fear at the time with AI warfare at the DoD was model poisoning. What if the Chinese poisoned training data to make an aircraft carrier group look like a flock of birds? That could lead to the next Pearl Harbor. So everything was about how do we make sure training data doesn't get poisoned so that some adversarial act, like a prompt or a particular visual in a certain way, doesn't trigger the AI model to behave differently. Examples of that are in spycraft. You had CCTV cameras all over cities. And in cities that had lots of CCTV, it became very difficult for spies to maneuver. And what if you put certain patterns on your face, on your body? You actually saw this in riots and protesters. If you put certain patterns, you could actually defeat Chinese CCTV cameras. In Ukraine, if you put is it Tencent? What's the online Chinese shop? If you put a certain pattern like that on your tank, it'll trigger, I think it was Baidu, it'll actually trigger a Baidu purchase order.
Alibaba.
That's what Alibaba. It'll totally screw up the
Send you a
AI
toy
algorithms.
plane.
Right? They'll send you buying a bunch of toy planes. So the issue is algorithm or data poisoning. So why is that interesting in cyber warfare? Well, all these LLMs, whether it's a Chinese model or Mythos and everything in between, they all trained their offensive cyber maneuvers on hack the box ranges and open capture the flag documentation that's all over the web. And if you know how LLMs work, they bias towards what they've seen before. So it's all about remembering and trying to predict the next token or next word based on historical, success. So it's actually incredibly easy to use deception to trick and bait AI LLM-based hackers to chase a decoy. And all you have to do is generate enough signal in that decoy layer to get the defenders to know that something's going on. So LLMs are actually very stupid and are pattern matchers. And so if they see the Juice Shop web app as a decoy, it's going to bias towards pursuing. That's a well-known vulnerable web app. It's going to bias towards pursuing that. So I think what's different in AI warfare is right now we're over-rotated around the role of LLMs for hackers, AI agents hacking and so on. But if you understand that they're inherently poisoned by their training data, you can use deception to exploit that and completely eliminate the threat. I think that's the X factor here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
you bring up an interesting point. I mean, we chatted before about AI poisoning when you can go up to someone's website who's got a chat bot there, and you can convince that chat bot to say, "Hey, when anybody comes to this website, refer me as the as a better option," right? You're a competitive referral, right? I mean, I'm getting that's more of an economical benefit, but it looks like you can really take this much further. So is that the thing that actually is going to give us a little bit of hope now?
I think it'll absolutely give a ton of hope because if you can, so deception's always been a frustrating topic for me as a CIO because I could barely secure myself, let alone try to create a replica of my network with a bunch of decoys. And those decoys are generally kind of hard to use and where to place them and so on. So I do think there's an opportunity for the next generation of deception whose sole job is to deceive LLM attackers. And you don't actually need this to be sophisticated. In fact, the more it looks like a hack the box range, the more likely it is to get for the LLM to chase it. Where I do think there's a legit threat, which has always been the case though, is a savvy, experienced hacker using LLMs as unlimited interns. In that scenario, I think that you're going to see still quite a bit of effectiveness. But I do think we could undercut the effectiveness of just pure agentic attackers using deception as like the key line of defense.
So Snehal, as well, on top of that, right? It depends on who has the ability to create all of these decoys, right? Because mostly in the SMB world, they're not going to be creating these decoys, right? So they're going to be kind of like open season. So it's kind of like the haves and the have-nots. How do we help those folks? Is that where Horizon 3.ai is going to help protect these people? Like, how do we get protection?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think back to a couple of things. One is um, a lot of those smaller businesses are serviced by MSSPs for the most
Yeah.
part. And especially in international, I mean, the primary delivery of cybersecurity in Europe is through MSSPs. Same thing in Asia Pacific, although in Europe, MSSPs tend to be regional, kind of local language providers. Bavarian MSSP for Bavarian customers, as an example. Whereas in Asia Pacific, it tends to be the telcos that are the MSSP providers to that market and whatnot. So I do think that MSSPs have a huge opportunity to build, once again, another value-added service on top of them around deception and decoys to help prevent attacks in that segment of the market. And I do think that the bigger players are going to figure this out, the JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanleys of the world, and they've got the resources to do it.
Yeah.
I do think there's a huge opportunity for the channel and for MSSPs to lead the way in that mid-market and commercial segment in the industry.
Big time.
I wanted to drill down a little bit on your channel strategy. I was reading up a little bit on it, and the company tends to focus on three areas: consulting firms, tech partners, and advisory practices. The first two I certainly understand, but what about the third area there? What does that entail?
Yeah, I would actually broaden it for a moment. So um, Horizon 3 has, I think now like 5,500 companies globally using us, somewhere in there, 5,500. 70% of those companies are fully serviced by MSSPs, which means we don't touch them. We as Horizon 3 don't touch them. The MSSP sources them, closes it, like signs them as sub clients, will enable and onboard them, get them to be successful, and then provides follow-on remediation and other things like that to those logos. So I think that works out to like 3,500, 4,000 companies by MSSPs. And for every dollar those MSSPs make white labeling or OEMing our AI hacker, they generate $10 to $20 of high margin services revenue on top of us. They bundle remediation, they bundle IR retainers, they'll bundle virtual CISO advisory services. And that's a really important part of how they become lifelong champions of Horizon 3, because I've openly stated to them, I will never enter the consulting business, the services business. Our job is to be a product company that scales up, and we preserve that high margin services revenue for our partners to monetize. And that's why they get excited working with us. So I think that like there's three areas you talked about, it does get murky. It's not such a clean, you guys know this. There's not such a clean segmentation in the reseller market. because
Yeah.
like a large firm might have all three. They've got an advisory practice where they're a virtual CISO. They've got a services practice where they're selling remediation. They've got an MDR practice. It's funny, we have like SentinelOne reps will use us to take out, or partners will use us to take out CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike partners will use us to take out SentinelOne, because you run our AI hacker against the incumbent, show how bad they are, and use that to accelerate your sale. And so we're just selling, shovels and buckets to all the people in the cyber world. And so it's more about what business models do we enable through our assessments, because the goal of running a pen test isn't to find problems, it's to quickly fix problems that matter. And you monetize the quickly fix problems that matter part of it, whether it's tuning your EDR, fixing your Splunk install, patching a bunch of JMX servers, fixing your web app firewall rules. There's a million ways to make money off of us. Does
Damn.
that make sense?
10 to 20. I
Yeah.
mean, I'd be happy with just $7 to $8 of downstream revenue. Come on, man. You're trying to make everybody else look bad. So now, so we talked about the first one, Mythos. We talked about the war. What about this third one that we should be worried about? Which I forgot now what it is already.
Yeah, I forgot that. So
I know there was
let's.
three.
Yeah. It's we're who's that guy that ran for president? I couldn't remember the third point in the middle of the debate. I thought I wrote it down as well. Well, anyways, let's maybe pivot because I can't remember the third one. We may have covered it with deception actually,
Yeah.
around the effectiveness of LLMs. That's what it was. So we talked about Mythos and Vulnapocalypse and the CISA KEV wave. We talked about no longer distinction between military and non-military, and then the third was the deception piece, which
There you
is
go.
AI warfare, and what does that really mean to practitioners? I think the answer is it can be a nothing burger if as you realize that these models are inherently poisoned by the data they trained off of. Now, but back to the channel, and there's a channel podcast, $10 to $20 of high margin revenue. What is it that makes one cybersecurity company super effective in the channel and a cyber company that screws the channel up altogether? So I'd actually ask that question back to you guys. So what are some best practices you guys have seen with cyber vendors that have successfully engaged the channel? And what are some, you've got to have a couple of good war stories on how vendors totally screwed the channel up.
Hey, don't compete. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
It's called riding shotgun.
Or be clear, like a long time ago, when IBM had was rolling out the PC, right? They decided they couldn't sell it directly, right? 100% of the time. So they went out and they told the channel, we're going to take the top 25, right? And then the rest is yours. And they stuck to it, right? So yeah, don't compete and also be clear.
Yeah, but rules of engagement, man, is the fundamentals of the world, and don't think because you got a PRM, you're channel friendly. If you can get 10 to 20 bucks downstream revenue, well, that's let's just put it this way, that's speaking channel language, right? And the reality is that you're a force from behind the channel community. You're a tailwind, and if you become a tailwind and you stick to that, channel partners are going to love you forever because they all want to make money. But if they know that you're always going to be there pushing for them, right? It's going to work. And, simple stuff like meeting them where they are. Not every channel partner is equal, right? Sometimes they need a little bit more handholding, sometimes less. But I'll tell you, channel partners are the most resilient organizations in the human history. You can beat them up forever, and they'll still get up, man. It's stood the test of time. But
the best problem solvers on the planet.
100%.
So I think about there's three underlying Lego blocks required for a successful channel. This is me as a cybersecurity CEO. Number one is it has to be super easy to qualify your product. How do you get a BDR to easily ask a question, a qualifying question on the phone, to know that there's a legit opportunity? So for us, with an unlimited budget, how many pen tests would you run a year? 1 to 2 or 4 or more? If the answer is 1 to 2 pen tests, I'm going to hand you to a partner for a consulting gig, like one-time PCI test, whatever. most of the time, the answer is 4 or more pen tests because cyber insurance, DORA, PCI, whatever, requires at least quarterly pen testing. So if you say with an unlimited budget, I want to run 4 or more pen tests a year, qualified, game on, we're going to go off and execute that POV and crush it. And so a super easy way to qualify the product. Another example of qualification is, man, you just bought a bunch of CrowdStrike. Are you sure it's tuned correctly? Let's go run a pen test and verify, or an EDR health check and verify that your CrowdStrike environment is configured right and you're getting the most of your value. Who's going to turn down an EDR health check, paid or free? Like up to you to monetize or not. And the third way to qualify is this vulnerability just hit the news for Palo. Let's go make sure that your firewalls aren't exposed because I just sold you a bunch of firewall, right? Let's go run that CISA KEV test. So qualify. You've got to make it super easy for a fresh college grad to quickly qualify an opportunity as a BDR. The second thing is prove. It can't take 6 months to prove your tech. For us, if it takes more than 15 minutes to get a pen test up and running, we screwed up somewhere. It should be that fast to initiate the test. And then you're not looking at hypothetical results. You're actually talking through the findings of the test with the prospect. And it is eye-opening. It's like, holy crap, just happened. 75% of the passwords at a large organization were exactly the same, which is shocking. And this is like thousands and thousands of passwords, because there was a problem in their password change enforcement policy. So you had the default password when you joined as an employee, and they never forced you to change your password. Even though they had that as a policy, it was never actually turned on. So prove has to be super fast. It can't take 6 months or 9 months. And this is, by the way, a big problem with new AI companies is forward deployed engineers are inherently unfriendly to the channel. It takes too many calories to run the bake-off. The third part is quote. You can't require a PhD in math to quote a product. It has to be super simple. So we quote by asset. The number of unique assets in your network, how that times a number is how much it's going to cost for unlimited pen testing. And assets is great because if you quoted EDR, you quoted EDR by asset also. It's a familiar metric. So easy to qualify, easy to prove, easy to quote. If you nail those 3 things as a security vendor, you are on your way to being channel friendly. But where does everyone screw up? Incentives. You have to have the right incentives that don't create conflict between your reps and the channel partners. So at Horizon 3, my reps make less money taking the deal direct. So we actually have a higher cost of sale, still really good, but a higher cost of sale, because we want to make sure that no rep is incentivized to take a deal direct. In fact, if you sourced a deal yourself, like a sales qualified lead, you are motivated to hand that lead to a partner to close. Because the idea is you're going to give that partner rep free chicken. They get excited and they're going to help you find more deals. In fact, in Q4, 40% of our revenue was originated and closed by the channel with 0 touch by Horizon 3. That's just a cash register, man. That's going to get to 60, 70, 80% over the next 12 months. And that's how you scale a global company. And the other interesting part is, cybersecurity CEOs like, well, why the hell am I going to hand 12% cut or whatever it might be to the channel partner? I could just add that 12% in ARR. And that's just short-term thinking. And this is where if you take the deal direct, you're going to piss off all your channel partners. That 12% cut or whatever your cut is to the partner blended, 20% or whatever, is an investment. You've invested that money in the channel. They're getting excited. And you've got to look at what was the return on investment. So in Q4 for us, which just ended end of January, I think that we ended up with a 8x return on investment. So for every dollar we handed the partner in fees, like skim to them, we generated 8x more revenue in partner originated deals. You have to treat that partner cut as an investment, as an ROI, and track that in the company. And I think those are the parts that drive a channel friendly motion.
Snehal, it's like that's music to our ears, my friend. There you go. That's how you do it. Lesson to be told out there. Hey, we're running towards the end of this session here, but I wanted to give you the last word. Any last minute stuff yet? Last time you want to add something there, Paulo?
Yeah, just quickly, just on channel opportunity, because I was reading up on you guys. You have something called the Dunbar number, and it's sort of like it breaks down and whenever that number in terms of an organization that channel partner is targeting hits, that's when the opportunity becomes greater. That's what I learned. Is how did you come up with that? Who is Dunbar? Is he a member of your team?
It's his friend.
What's that all about?
So Dunbar's not a member of my team, but that sounds like a Tim Mackeyism. We call him Ginny Mac at Horizon 3. So Tim Mackey built the channel at Sentinel One. He built the channel, I think, at Clarity and a few other places, and he's just an absolute legend alliances guy and channel partner guy. And I think what it really represents is focus. It's
Okay.
you can only focus on so many partners. So for instance, right now, we are actually signing less new partners, and we're going really deep in the partners that we have. And
Right.
so Mackey's kind of thesis is, look, I don't want to it looks really cool to have a ton of partners, but if most of them aren't contributing, they're actually a tax on the organization. I'd rather, like, for the number of channel partner managers and someone we have, I'd rather be have fewer partners that we go really deep with and be wildly successful with to build that nucleus. And so I think that's where that concept and number comes from. It's all about attention and focus. And I think that's a super important level of maturity and discipline. Like, there's an ego behind saying I've got 10,000 partners, but if 9,950 of them contributed nothing, they're a tax because you had to train them, enable them,
Yep.
so on and so forth. And so how do you focus, like, look at the ratio of partners to enablement and be really deep where you can.
100%.
So true.
Love it, man. So Snehal, you get the last word, my friend. What's the best website for them to learn? Is it Horizon3.ai, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So two things. One is, it has never been tougher to be a CISO when you look at all of the issues being thrown at them today. It has therefore never been more important to be a trusted advisor to the CISO. So my first point of the last word is, the channel is that last mile of trust. Don't screw it up. Don't chase hype. Don't chase news. Focus on being that trusted advisor, because your role now has never been more important. Number one. Number two, life is short, man. Work with people you love working with. Work with companies that respect you. Work with vendors that trust you. Work with sales reps that are helping to make sure you hit club just like the way they're hitting club. Work with people you love working with, and work with organizations you trust that you know are not going to change the rules on you mid-fight or midstream. If you nail those two things, you're going to have a fun, impactful career.
Awesome.
You sound like us, man. Damn, I love it.
Yeah. I love the vibe.
Yeah, great vibe. So now it's been a pleasure, man. And this is just part one. We're going to probably do this over and over again. I could have gone on for 3 hours here, man.
Oh yeah.
But hey, we've got
just
other
on the
things
war
to
bit.
do.
My God, I had tons of questions.
Damn.
Good. Let's do it again. Look, anytime you want, let's jump on. If there's anything big in the news, let's do this. Let's kind of wrap on the news. Let's talk about what's happening in cyber, best practice on go-to-market. I love this stuff, and you guys, you got a great. I love the channel, and you guys have a great reputation. So I'm excited to take those lessons learned and help make everyone go to club.
100%, man. We're gonna hook up again, and love that. Great, congratulations on the company. You're helping the cyber world a lot, man. So, and 10 to 20 bucks downstream. Hey, channel partners, when was the last time you heard that? You know, the biggest we've ever said is maybe like $8, $9. But let me know. Take care, man. Cheers.
Amazing. See you guys.
Take care. Thank you.